United States, we are about to celebrate the 4th of July, which is Independence Day, which is really implied that sense of community, solidarity, under the banner of democracy. Now, in one of the videos I made recently, I said, hey, look, you need to do some research because democracy is up for sale. And I stand by that assertion that I made, especially if you consider what's happening now. So we're talking about the Declaration of Independence. Have you heard of something called Alligator Alcatraz? I just happened to come across that, and it really got me. Alligator Alcatraz. Look it up. It's a proposal, essentially, to turn a base, a former military base, in the middle of the Everglades, you know, surrounded by nature, water, alligators, American crocodiles, you know, pythons, and all of this type of thing. It is a science fiction movie. It's terrible. It is a place of detention for immigrants. But what immigrants? Right? What immigrants? I mean, the first people in these lands were not European. The first people in these lands were not European. So everyone that came after the original people in these lands, then, would they not be immigrants? Think about that for just a second. Because before we start trying to break all this down, remember that we are talking about people who are related to other people. But you may not necessarily know all of that depending on where you are in the world. But ultimately, we are talking about people that are related. We're talking about families, children, and the like. Don't get me wrong. No one's talking about crime here. We're not talking about criminals. We all know the game. No one is an advocate for criminals running around. But no one is an advocate for criminals running around that we have elevated to positions of power. Right? So as we move into this weekend and everything that's happening, I urge you all to, again, do your research, right? Look at and see what's happening in this country with immigration especially, right? Don't put your head in the sand. Don't think that what you're seeing cannot touch you. Because what you're actually seeing is something that's been discussed at length. You may have heard it. Project 2025, right? That's not my thing, but I am aware of what it is and how it is set to impact the country, and particularly different groups, especially African people. You want to know why African people are not in the street? Because they understand what's happening in this country right now. This is a repeat of history. Did you learn your history? Or were you miseducated by your history? Think about that, right? Because I'm saying what's happening here is a repeat that's happened many times in this country, starting in colonial America. But if you've been forced to think or conditioned to think that what you've seen in this country is only related to black people, then you've taken the bait. You know, I can assure you that the real history with African people, right, has nothing to do with the color of our skin. But that's not what this is about. This video is not about that today. This is about the need to understand where your real unity is going to lie. Because what you see right now are detention agents, ICE agents. They are scouring the country, looking for people with masks on, no ID, right? Nothing. You have no idea who those people are, coming to take you from your home, places of work, courthouses, church buildings, maybe even weddings. Come on, man. One of the things about this country that made people come to it was the promise of what they could have, right? But you cannot be in this country and engage in the sickness of whiteness. It doesn't work, because it is a sickness. And I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about what was engineered. Now again, if you're hearing me say this and this sounds strange and difficult to hear, then I once again tell you, go into the research, right? You need to know this. You need to know that the race was invented, right? And you need to know that it was entirely political. The laws that were passed to keep people separated. It goes on and on. But without history, you won't understand it. You'll think you're hearing language that's strange to you, when in fact, truth is stranger than fiction. So, let me help you here. Immigration, do you really think immigration is about a bunch of criminals taking over the United States of America? Think about that for just a second. You're talking about the empire, the ruler of the known universe. Do you really think the United States of America is really worried about a few criminals? Now, I'm not talking about enemies that the country created. That's different. I'm talking about the people that we hear that are crossing our borders and they are malcontent and all these other types of things, right? Do you think those people are really the ones that our government fears? Come on now. Do not take the bait. Immigration is a numbers game. It's about genetics, right? It is about the fear that because of recessive genes, that if you have more brown people in this country than you have what, quote, white people, then the white people will be the minority. And you think I'm saying something that's strange to you? Now, think about it. Get past this narrative of crime and think about what the real concern is. You know, there's research out there. The Dearth, check out that book. Dearth, yep. You see, there's always been a concern about not enough white children being born. But you see, white children, or the issue or challenge with white children being born, has to do with recessive genes. And recessive genes is what ends up happening when you continue to isolate, right, one particular group from the collective. So in this case, right, you could say that when certain laws were passed in this country that would stop their intermarriage or intermixing of races, which was called anti-miscegenation laws, right? No mixing. Well, once that happened, then the strain essentially would become weaker. Read the research of Gregor Mendel if you want to know more in-depth knowledge about dominant and recessive traits and what ends up happening with recessive traits. One of the things that happens is that they do not breed as much or maybe as successfully, right? Check it out. Don't let this sound strange to you. Don't be surprised, because while you're looking for criminals and you're being sold a narrative, what you're really facing is someone that's trying to stop the United States from having more brown people, people of color, or white people being taken over. Now, if you think that is strange, then read the research or the writings by Thomas Jefferson in his Wrath of God. He said this long ago. And based on the writings of Thomas Jefferson and the information that I'm sharing with you today, certain policies were put into place to try to help or stave off what is natural. And what is natural cannot be overcome no matter how many laws are created. But let me come back to the idea of immigration so you are not lost here. You see, the real reason that they're throwing people in detention centers in places surrounded by something that can be described as nothing less than Jurassic Park is not because of crimes they committed. It's because they're trying to control the populations of people of color. The financial and the legal system is already set up, right? People don't know this, but nobody of color is set up financially in this country in more advantageous ways. White people are not losing jobs to immigrants or any of that. That is a narrative. And again, I want to stay away from the politics and direct your mind to the real information. So you need to search, because without knowledge, you may find yourself caught up, right? You may find yourself believing things again that you do not understand. And here's another issue or challenge. In some places, they're trying to place the 10 Commandments in classrooms. They may even get around to having Bibles in schools. But how many of you that say you believe in God and the Bible, how many of you know when the Bible was written? Tell me, when was it written? Where? What was the source of the writings of the Bible, right? So keep in mind that for the first 2 million years on the planet, right, everybody that we know was African. So by the time we got to writings, right, we would have to get to Egypt and then other civilizations. So when do we get the Bible? Somewhere between 109 and 900 AD. That's a long time after civilization and writing and religion had been on the planet. So again, if you don't know where that book comes from that you call the Bible, right? If you don't know that the person that you call Jesus, the only time he shows up is in the AD period, but no other historical time before that, just the AD period, between 109 and 900 AD. Think about that. And before you get to the Bible, remember, before it was the S-O-N, it was the S-U-N. And before it was 12 disciples, there were 12 archetypes. You know, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, that group. Yep. Now, do you think I'm lying? How would you know? You see what I'm saying? You need to research, right? Because without knowledge, we are separated, disconnected, easily misled. Now, again, I started this piece asking you, have you ever heard of something called Alligator Alcatraz? A place that is a planned detention center for immigrants, somebody's family, someone who came to this country on a promise that they could make a better life. And now they're about to live in something worse than a nightmare. But who's really free from that? If you don't know the history, then a cycle will repeat itself, right? For those of you who are walking around in brown skin, you need to stay connected. I don't give a damn who you are, where you are. You need to stay connected. And I say this to all of the family, especially those who have been misled most painfully, my white brothers and sisters, right? Because they've also been impacted by this history that I'm sharing with you. No one escapes the miseducation, the narrative, and what we see today. It may be presented to you differently, but don't think anybody's escaped what we're all experiencing right now. Look at the country. Look at the protests. Look at what's happening here. Stay connected. Stay connected. Thank you.